everybody, this is Carl with Tabletop Tango. I'm glad everyone could be here. Today I'm going to talk about old school revival, OSR, or is it old school renaissance? Is it old school? I don't know. But OSR are games that kind of call back to the original roots of D&D. They sometimes talk about rules or rulings over rules. And it's an interesting genre. There's a lot of those games out there, like Dungeon Crawl Classics is a big one that everybody knows about. Today I'm going to go through a cool one that I found that through a number of podcasts and other things called Low Fantasy Gaming. Its tagline is Low Magic, High Fantasy. So let's go ahead and bring that page up. And so here we go. Here's the book. I'll do a walkthrough like I always do. I think it's going to be interesting. I do a lot of talk about Savage Worlds, and it's a completely different game. I started gaming back in the old AD&D and Redbox set, like many older folks like myself. So let's talk about what the authors of this book, how they think about it. They say, what is low fantasy gaming? It's rules light, and that's pretty much true. There's not a lot to the rules here. Not as a lot of situation rules, no feats, no things like that. Fast and engaging combat. It's still an attrition system. You're still whacking away at hit points, trying to get them down. It is dangerous and gritty, as many of those old school games are at low level, where a monster can kill you in a blink of the eye. I don't know about realistic world. We'll leave that one there, but we'll let them decide I'll let you decide for yourself. Dark and dangerous magic. Its magic system's very similar to what you would expect from a D&D style game. There's a little bit of nuance here where you're rolling to see if something bad happens while you're successfully casting magic. Something bad can go happen, and that's definitely a little bit different than D&D, where a spell goes off, the spell's going to go off, and there's no repercussions except for your target. And so this is kind of their thoughts and what they think is what makes their game unique. They talk a little bit about the core features. There really are only 5 classes. Again, it feels very much like the old Redbox system or games similar to that, where you've got Barbarian, Bard, Fighter, Rogue, Magic User, and that's it. 12th level maximum. I'm sure you could figure out a way to go beyond that, but I look at this as probably not a game for a super long campaign. It feels like it'd be fun to mix things up with it. I'll talk a little bit more about how you roll and do combat resolution and that sort of thing. But I won't go into a lot of detail here because I'm going to be going into detail there. So let's go ahead and talk about creating a character. And so they talk about it's very similar to what you'd expect. You roll up attributes. There's strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence. There's perception, willpower, and charisma, and then you use that information to calculate a luck score. And luck is used for saving throws, for cool things you can do in combat, and a bunch of stuff like that. And then they talk about choosing skills. Skills are different. Well, I don't know if they're different. There's a lot of games out there, but they're different than some of the games I played, where you roll against your skill, or your skill adds a bunch to your rolls. Here, if you have a skill, it means you may be able to do something, or it gives you a +1 to your roll. There isn't like levels of skills. You have the skill or you do not have the skill. Background. So let's talk a little bit about the attributes. They show here. They describe them a little bit. They show how you would calculate them. I don't need to get much into it because it's kind of a 4d6 roll, drop the lowest kind of makeup. You get to assign, but I'm sure any standard 3d6 style of rolling mechanic would be fun if you wanted to do that. They talk about alternate methods where you can use presets to make your character basically mostly good for the thing that you want. Nothing really too crazy there. It goes into then talking about what each of the ability scores mean. Perception is one that maybe is a little different than we'd run into in some of the other kind of clones. This is alert, observant, good vision. So this might be, they don't have the idea of a notice skill or an observation skill that you would roll against. So perception, this perception attribute probably plays that role in this particular game. Then there's luck. Luck is a attribute that's reflects kind of the experience, what the character, how good the character is at dealing with things in different circumstances. So luck is your primary save is luck. There's not a will save or a save versus rods and magic. It's all against luck. And it also is pretty flexible, and it lets you during combat you can spend luck. Well, you're not really spending it, but you're trying to roll underneath your luck, and if you roll underneath it, you can do some interesting maneuvers within combat, and I'll talk about that. So at the start of your adventure, your luck is equal to 10 plus half your level, rounded up. So at the start of your character's world, their luck is 11. So that's, if you think about it, that's just a little bit better than 50% to be successful if you need to make a luck roll without any penalties or bonuses. What's interesting is every time you succeed on a luck roll, your luck attribute is reduced by 1. So you have to kind of think about how you're using it, because it's more than just a saving throw. So every time you try to do one of these interesting maneuvers in combat, then you would spend a luck, and you'd be a little bit less for your ability to make a saving throw later. And then it talks about regaining. It's like 1 point per long rest, and they got the concept of short rest, long rest, very similar to D&D. Classes. Let's just look at one of them, just so we see what its structure is. So when they talk about a class, here's an example: Barbarian. Each class has a key attribute. It talks about the hit points they get per level, what they can use from an armor or shield. So again, very much feels like those old games where your class defines what you can and cannot do. You're a barbarian, therefore you're not allowed to use heavy armor, because that's just not who you are as a barbarian. And then it talks about skills. So there's animal lore, wilderness lore, and then +4 of the others. And so you can pick these different skills. Again, now skills aren't the same as, we're not going to roll against acrobatics. Acrobatics, if you are in a combat or something, or a situation, you say, hey, I'm going to try to tumble to do something, the game master may say, oh, well, that is an acrobatics skill you're using, therefore you'll get a +1 to that dexterity roll that you're attempting. And so instead of your dexterity 13, maybe it's a 14, and you're trying to roll underneath that 14. Has the good old advancement table that gives you your attack bonus number, and then it talks about the special features that each class gets as they go. So ferocious rage is one, wilderness ranger, sixth sense. I won't read them, but one of the interesting things I find is they talk about this game as being rules light, which it is. It's not real heavy, but it leaves some things to the imagination. So so at the 3rd, 6th, 9th, and 12th level, you get a unique feature. And so it says every 3rd level, devise one new ability, trait, or theme for your barbarian. Feel free to borrow classes, perks, and other things from other RPGs. So there's not a list. They don't give you a list of all sorts of interesting things that you might choose from, from a feat or standpoint. It's up to you and your game master to use your creativity to come up with something that makes sense. And it even says steal from another game if you want to. So it's rules light, but part of it is it doesn't have the richness of choices, and that could, for some players, I'm sure that'll be a problem because they want to go from a laundry list and pick from it. But for those who have a little creativity and they want to make their character unique, this gets beyond the I'm just doing my level grinding. Now you can pick something unique about your character as long as your game master agrees to it. And so again, here's all these different special things that this barbarian gets, and that goes on for each of the classes. Bard, and so I'm not going to go too far into those. We just wanted to talk about one of the classes. Let me find go to skills. So then we start talking about a little bit about a resolution mechanic. And so there's a concept of skilled versus unskilled. A lot of this, again, is rulings over rules. So it says here, at the GM's discretion, some actions might require a skill or specialized knowledge that a character has to have to even make an attempt. So the example they give here is an apothecary skill, which might be required to make an antitoxin or understand how plants or whatever can be used to do something interesting. That's something you just have to be skilled. You have to know it in order to even attempt to do it. Versus something else where it's you may not have skill in it, but there's still a chance you might be able to do it from an unskilled standpoint. So the skill table, so there's a skill table that indicates which attributes lie to or aligned with the different skills and how they pair. So it's just a table. But the idea is that if you have a skill, one of the things with the resolution mechanic is it's a roll under mechanic, if I haven't mentioned that. So you have your attributes, which is 3 to 18. And you have different bonuses or penalties depending on the game master defines it, and then you roll underneath that value. So in a skill, so if you have a skill in a particular area, it's going to add you a +1 to your ability to do that. And then it also adds what they call a reroll pool. So if you have a skill in an area, you can ultimately try to do a reroll if you fail from your reroll pool, and that's the number of those is based on your level. And so let me look here. I was reading something. Oh yes, and reroll pool dice can also be used for your luck as well as recovery rolls. And then they're all dead and mostly dead are things related to if you go down in combat. So it can be, you can re-roll there. And it's based on the lost my train of thought, sorry about that, but it's based on the fact that you have a skill that's aligned to the check you're making. You can leverage that re-roll pool. So again, it's a roll under system. You get a bonus for having a particular skill. And if you can roll it unskilled, then you don't get that bonus, obviously. And having that skill allows you then to leverage your reroll pool to take another whack at it if you think that you want to succeed. So here's that table we talked about. So it talks about when these things are relevant. Obviously, it's all up to the game master, and that's one of the fun things often is to try to figure out how to apply these. And you can add your own skills or what have you. So there's acrobatics, which is tumbling, parkour, all sorts of things like that, which is different than athletics, which is running, climbing, swimming, jumping. But, there's going to be a lot of situations where you're going to have to make a call one way or the other. So that's a little bit about skills, how skills affect your resolution mechanic. Party bonds, little role-playing flavor. Won't get too much into that. The races, we've got elves, dwarves, as well as humans. This game, I think somewhere in it, unless I'm thinking of a different one I read, is sort of human-centric. And so there's really not a ton of races other than dwarves and elves to play. And there's probably maybe supplements to do otherwise, but it's really kind of a human-centric game. Then there's the wonderful equipment list. Won't spend a ton of time going through equipment, but it's got all the bog standard items that you'd figure would be found in a fantasy role-playing game. Animals, melee weapons, and within the weapons it does have the concept of quality of the weapon based on material, weapon properties, and then you get the pretty standard weapon. Here's the cost, damage, properties of it. So nothing too out of the ordinary there or crazy, what have you. Talks about range weapons. And then we get into the section that talks about doing things, which is where it goes through the resolution mechanics and kind of the details of how all that stuff gets put together. Um, so, as I mentioned, and I'll mention again, is there's multiple kinds of checks. There's the attribute check, which is against your attributes. There's an attack roll. There's a luck save or a luck check, which uses that luck score that you have. And then there's percentile checks, which are primarily for rogues capabilities. And at some point, it's a game master may just say, "Hey, there's a 50% chance this is going to succeed," or "There's a 33.3% chance this is going to succeed. Let's roll the percentage dice." So attribute rolls checks are pretty standard. Roll on the D20. If the roll is equal to or under the attribute, the action is successful. And then the GM applies modifiers depending on the circumstances. Again, that ruling, how hard this is. If it's something aligned with a skill, you'd get that bonus for the skill. If you have some other things that might affect it, then those also may improve or deprove, or make it harder to be successful. So D20 or below. Talks a little bit about modifiers here, and typically they're 1 to 2 point. It describes it because let's be honest. +1 is a 5% improvement in your chance. So a lot of pluses added together will quickly make it so that it's not really that difficult to succeed. They also talk about in certain circumstances where you're very beneficial. You can roll 2d20 and take the best d20. So just like good old D&D 5th edition with advantage, it has that same concept for that. Talks a little bit about contests, and this is where you have opposing rolls where characters are, against like grappling and that sort of thing. And it's whoever succeeds by the greatest margin wins, and ties mean the status quo remains. So very simple mechanic for anything that's an opposed check. They talk a little bit about group tracks, and then when they talk again about retries, which is not something you generally are allowed to do unless the circumstances changes. But remember, you got that reroll pool, but this is different. So this is the idea of like where characters would try to pick the lock. Oh, I failed. Let me pick it again. Oh, I failed. Let me pick it again until I succeed. Circumstances really have to change in order for that to be true, to be able to do that. And again, game master rules over or rulings over rules. So they talk that there could be degrees of success and failure. 1.5 times more than the attribute rounded down is a terrible failure. Natural 20 is usually a terrible failure. Natural 1 always a good thing to have. Then talk about the percentile check, and then combat. The combat system is pretty straightforward. There's not a lot of crazy. It's turn-based. Roll the initiative, line up the characters, do your attacks back and forth. There is the concept of delaying your turn, putting your character on hold. There's also the concept of the ready action, where you can say, as soon as something X happens, I'm going to do my thing. And so let's talk about this a little bit. So roll initiative, D20 for each adventure, and then the Game Master rolls a D20 for the monsters, or may split it up depending on how it looks. Now the thing, unless I missed it, but what's not here is you notice there's no bonus for high dexterity or anything like that. It's just a D20. So I might have missed it, and that's quite possible, but I didn't see it when I was reading through the rules. So then we go from highest to lowest. Each person gets their turn. It talks about the things you can do. You can delay, as I mentioned, so until another character's turn is complete, and then go. You can ready an action, like I'm going to wait until someone comes through the door, and then I'm going to attack. Then you have a dex contest to find out who acts first. And that's if they can't occur simultaneously. So I guess it's going to be, again, a ruling of the game master. If you say I'm standing behind the door, and when somebody comes through, I'm going to swing my sword, I guess, unless they're also swinging their sword at whoever, they're bursting through the door swinging their sword. I guess that's not really happening at the same time. I personally would rule that, yeah, you just attack because you were waiting for them. You can do moves. No great craziness there. 30 foot at a time. That sounds very familiar, doesn't it? There's a concept of intercepting where if you're within 30 feet, you can declare that you're going to attempt to intercept. And then on a dex check, modified by armor and all the other factors, you can get in front of that character and intercept them. Great, I guess that's great if somebody's going after your wizard and you're close enough. Charging, there's the idea of withdrawing, where again somebody gets a free attack. There's the party retreat, which is at the start of the round, the party wishes to flee. They got to explain why, what's the circumstances behind it that would allow them to do so. And then if they're successful, have to make a luck save, and then, whatever, strength, con, what have you. Also, they make those changes, they make those rolls, and if they're successful, they run away. So it's deadly, so it's good they got a mechanic built in to say, I can run away. There's the idea of the blocking area, where you block an area that's 5 feet in diameter, and enemies can't pass through you. And so then it goes through the common actions that you'll find. So there's making a melee attack, there's making a ranged attack, there's casting a spell, you can dodge, you can put a weapon away, retrieve something from your backpack. So you can see the different ones you can hear. Drink a potion, activate a magic item. So when we talk about melee attacks, so attacking is pretty straightforward, as you would expect in a game like this. If you're within 5 feet of your opponents, unless you've got a weapon that's got some range to it, or has some reach to it, I should say. So you attack, you roll a d20, plus your class level bonus, attack bonus. We saw that, for example, in a barbarian, that table. And then your strength modifier. If the result is equal to or higher than the target's armor class, you hit, and you do damage according to the weapon table, plus your strength modifier. Straightforward, again, kind of that attrition system. I'm going to hit you, take some hit points away. Range attack, very similar, but this time we're using dex. So as our modifier to hit the armor class and do damage. Damage is from the hit points. When you reduce to 0 hit points, you are either unconscious or dead, and this is where we talked about, dead and mostly dead under injuries and healing. Talk about the character can use their action to dodge or parry, or try to focus on their defense, and that's till the start of their next turn. And so the character has an advantage on any dex checks to resist adverse effects and luck saves, and the enemies suffer a disadvantage on attack rolls. So advantage, remember, you get to roll 2d20s, take the highest one. Disadvantage, you roll 2d20s and you take the lowest one. Now here's what's kind of cool from that old standard ice slog back and forth swinging my sword. They have these things called martial exploits, and what these are is if you can kind of do something special based on your success. So here, a minor one is, let's go here. So minor are limited to one target, have instance and short duration, and they incur as part of the attack action. So what happens is, if you make a successful attack, and then you can roll under your luck to do something interesting to your opponent. So again, it's up to the GM what's minor or major. So they'll make different rulings. Maybe this isn't using luck. I thought this one was using luck. All right, well, I probably stand corrected here, but for minor exploits to occur, the game master is going to make a ruling. So let's say it might be an opposed strength check to knock an opponent off his feet. And so you have to have a successful attack and then say, hey, I'm going to try to knock him to the ground, and then that would be your exploit that you would do. So again, it's up to the GM to make the to make the ruling. I'm just reading here a little bit, just to make sure I got it right. So then there's the concept of major exploits. And that would be something much more critical to the battle. Here it says, shattering a foe's weapon, impaling them, uh, you know, uh, grab the enemy's hand and crack their skulls together, doing something kind of fun like that. Um, and so exploits can affect more than one target, and they're subject to the rules. They can't increase damage to the target. They cannot kill instantly. Um, there's some special exceptions, but those are related to. I won't get into the special exceptions, but so here's where the luck roll. See, hey, I knew it came in here somewhere. So here they will make a successful attack, and then they make a luck roll, modified based on the discretion of the GM, of course. And if successful, the exploit occurs, and the luck is decreased by 1, just like any other luck roll where you're successful, it's decreased by 1. There's also the concept of another exploit called rescues, where you can go in and in certain situations kind of attempt to take the hit for someone else. They show the example here. An enemy's about to unleash a lightning blast on a magic user, and they've failed their luck roll. The party rogue declares a rescue, attempts to push his comrade out of harm's way. The GM agrees and calls for that dex check. And so it's based on a check. And the rogue successfully makes it. The rogue then makes his scoring 4 as well under his luck save without warning. Shout. The rogue barrels into the mage user, sending him sprawling out of the path of the sizzling blast. So that's kind of cool, where you can, sort of sacrifice or attempt to sacrifice to save your friend. If an exploit fails, though, a minor, major, or rescue fails, a character may not attempt another one against the same target until the circumstances change. And if the GM decides on a natural 20 on an exploit, luck check may result in kind of a special setback, something bad happening. Now, I would say, as a game master, if people are using exploits all the time and they're doing it, kind of silly, maybe it's just, failed exploit, something happens anyway. That's totally up to you. Then it talks about the fighting styles and how they all align and any special rules related to them. So, for example, for two-weapon fighting, it talks about how a shield might be able to use as a second weapon, but they lose the shield benefit. So there's a lot of these sort of circumstantial rules. Talk about cover, surprise, visibility, and how that affects the different checks in the game. So all these, so you have a lot of the standard modifiers to what's going on in combat. You can attempt to use your weapon for a knockout. There's the concept of critical hits and fumbles. Again, I'm not going to talk a ton about every one of these rules. Then they talk about healing and injuries. So there's kind of 3 states in a sense. Obviously, you're up, you got hit points. Then there's staggered. If you go below 50% of your hit points, you're staggered. And you can use that as kind of an indicator of how your opponents are and what where they live, and so it doesn't have any real mechanical anything mechanical except for some classes and monsters. There's abilities that may be triggered when you're staggered. I didn't read through the entire bestiary, so I'm sure it's something where they get a second wind or something along those lines. When a monster's hit points hit 0, they're dead. Okay. When a character's hit points hit dead or hit 0, they're either all dead or mostly dead. So after a fight, if a adventurer's body is able to be recovered and examined, the character can make a con check, and your reroll pool can be used. And if it's successful, the character is just mostly dead. On a failure, the body cannot be recovered. You're dead. And so from a mostly dead standpoint, means, of course, you're slightly alive. Yes, I love how they are throwing back to the movie there. The character is unconscious and in process of dying, can be saved with help from the ally. Um, they characters can allies can help stabilize them. Um, so what's interesting is then that experience will leave a roll on the injury table, and that's kind of a D20 table, and that defines what happens based on that. So here we got an eye injury, perception checks that rely on sight, and a 30% chance miss on attack rolls. And that's permanent now because the eye is lost, and you would need something like a regenerate spell to restore that. So, mostly dead. You're not all dead, but there's consequences for it. And I'm sure I'm making some mistakes here from my memory. Then there's the concept of short rests and long rests. Short rest, you recover half your hit points and one of your expended class abilities that you have, and you get one reroll die back. Long rest, all your abilities are back. You get all of your reroll dice. Things are restored. You recover a point of luck and recover half your lost hit points. Now notice, on a long rest, you get one of your luck back. Just one. So luck is a valuable commodity that you don't necessarily want to spend willy-nilly. Then it goes into the magic system, and at the beginning of the book it talks about how the magic system is, dark and deadly, and it's dangerous to do magic. And this is where it talks about this concept of dark and dangerous. Magic is supposed to be rare. It's supposed to be inherently dangerous. Sorcery is not meant for mortals. So more of that swords and sorcery kind of feel for it. So whenever a facet of magic caster invokes, the danger remains the same. For every spell cast, the caster rolls a d20 to test for dark and dangerous effects. If the roll is a natural 1, the spell cast as usual, but with an additional magic effect from the DDM table, which is the dark and dangerous magic table. If the DDM effect does not occur, the chance increases by 1 for each spell cast until the effect is triggered. So the first time, natural 1, bad things happen. Next time, if it doesn't happen, then it's a 2 or more, bad things happen. So when a dark magical effect occurs, caster's luck attribute is reduced by a point. You reset the table, so you're back to 1 in 20 chance, and you roll on the table. So here's some of the, so it's a 1d100, so it's a percentile die. So what are some of the interesting things? So on 1 or 2, nothing happens, so that's kind of boring. How about 1718? Spirit Rend, you have the advantage on your spell damage. Nice. If the spell does not cause damage, then your next damage spell within 24 hours. Probably bad stuff later. Forbidden Love, you regain 1 expended spell use slot. Well, that's nice. Darkening, small open flames such as candle torch are automatically extinguished within 30 feet. That's interesting. Let's go up here. There's got to be something bad. That's super bad. So on 100, you gain a permanent effect. Ooh, foul beard, third eye, the claw, wing, jaw. No magic known to mankind can remove these effects. Nice. So a lot of these don't seem all that bad, but the idea, I think, in this game is that magic is supposed to be deadly, dangerous, and weird things can happen when you use it. Yeah, so it adds a lot of spice to the game. That'd be kind of fun. But it's different than, just I cast a spell and things happen. So I cast my spell, I roll it, and then this time I got a random creature within sight of hearing regains a random minor madness trait. The target is already suffering madness. It increases in severity. Oh, nice. So then the game master, you can take advantage of that and leverage that to your advantage. So where are we here? And then we get the list of spells. If you read through these and you're familiar with old school D&D, they will all look very, very, very similar. There's, of course, their own unique things, but you've got the good old detect. So, for example, on our first level, detect magic, cure light wounds, feather fall, magic missile, magic mouth. Okay, we get the feel here. Now you notice there's we have just magic users. There's not the concept of a cleric versus a wizard. So the spells are just spells. I'm sure you can flavor the game to your own desires if that's something that bothers you. Here you go. Dispel magic, gaseous form, all the good old-fashioned things, and everybody's favorite fireball. So and it goes up to the 6th level, because remember the characters can only go up to 12th level in this game. So that is magic, and then it goes through a spell description of everything. And then next there's a GM section after all of that, which is less about teaching you about how to be a game master, which a lot of the newer games do. It's more about situations like combat and falling, advancement, downtime, how to handle chases, things like that. I don't know how easy it is to see my little sidebar here, but you can see downtime. There's a dungeon room generators. Talks about NPC reactions, morale of creatures, the different stats of a monster and what those all mean. So this, I won't go through the Game Master section in too much depth, because that's for you Game Masters. And it has mostly mechanical information. So if you're looking for what's a good way of learning how to do these rulings and balance and be a good game master, you're not going to find it here. And then talks a little bit about wilderness exploration. So you can see there's some tables that define how far you can travel and what things look like. And so, good things for the game master to have available. Nothing all that noteworthy, except for it's a little bit of stuff to help out. So that is low fantasy gaming. Low fantasy gaming, I looked at, the document I looked at was the free version. There's 2 free versions, one with a kind of a parchment looking background and one with the white background. I have the white background, but you can purchase a copy that's, I believe, kind of enhanced, has additional information in it, and actually is probably well worth the money. The folks that I've heard talk about it, they've purchased copies and been very happy with it. For just going through it and giving you a flavor for the game, I didn't think that was necessary, and I don't need another book on my bookshelf at this exact moment. So PDF I will go with. So this was, again, low fantasy gaming. Pretty straightforward mechanics. Roll below your attribute with bonuses, penalties. Pretty standard attack. Roll that D20. Try to get over the armor class. So really good old feel of old school D&D. I was looking for an old school D&D kind of clone to play some adventure without using 5e. And this one looked like something that I might be interested in using. It seems pretty easy to teach somebody if I'm doing a one-shot at a convention. Anybody who's familiar with the old Red Box will naturally immediately understand this game. What's cool, though, is it's got the exploits, and so you can add some flavor to your combat. I'm a big Savage Worlds person, and so the idea of tests and support roles that are in that game I find very, very fun. So the concept that as I'm attacking, I can try to do something like trip up my opponent, throw dirt in their eye, do something, exploit my advantage in the attack really appeals to me. The luck mechanic is nice in the sense that you can use it for savings, you can use it to drive major exploits and that sort of thing, but it goes down and it recovers very slowly. So if you're really driving and trying to get successful, you could leave yourself in a very bad position as far as being able to make saves later in the adventure, and a long rest is only going to get you 1 back. So like I say, deadly game, or more deadly than other games. Magic's a little dark and dangerous, though the table, there's a lot of stuff that's not all that dark, it seems to me, but dark and dangerous. So it looks like it's going to be a fun game. I'm going to give it a whirl. Definitely for a one-shot, it would be fun. A longer campaign with the limit of 12th level, maybe not, but it still would be fun. So this is Carl with Tabletop Tango, and I appreciate everybody listening again. Hopefully this was informative. I'll be back with Eric again once we have some topics he and I are going to talk about, but hopefully this is a fun game for you to take a look at.